So FOCP has also been working with Arctic Watch, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to employ technology, communications, and local expertise to enhance safe, secure, and environmentally responsible maritime operations in Alaska's Arctic waters. So FOCP and Arctic Watch have a successful ongoing collaboration through their sharing of the IARPC mooring matrix, asset locations on Arctic Watch. And we have also collaboratively designed this Arctic Cruise daily report template that is intended to help daily reports reach a wider audience, standardize information being shared, provide points of contact, and archive data, such as weather, sea state, marine mammal observations, science operations, and more. We developed this through conversations with research coordinators. We worked with IARPC's community engagement specialists to get feedback from communities. We held a public IARPC meeting around this effort and had the template posted to IARPC for public comment, but we are still looking for any feedback and insight from users for how to improve this and to make it so people want to use this template. We would love to see some more engagement, so any feedback is welcome here. So in May 2025, we held a pre-field season meeting. This was an opportunity to share field season plans across projects, generate collaborations and mutual awareness, and communicate cruise plans to coastal communities and other interested groups. For reference, this didn't get updated, but it's the 2025 pre-field season meeting link is here. And so without taking any more time, we're going to get right into our presentations today. So today's meeting will focus on unique observations and significant findings, successes or challenges encountered, data for sharing and collaborations. And the speakers are divided into two groups, each that have Q&A for each group, and then we will have a larger discussion at the end of the meeting. So with that, this is a snapshot of today's agenda and who will be speaking. And with that, I'm going to head it over to MB to take on group one.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And yeah, thank you all again. So I am excited to be able to kick us off with our first round of talks. And we will have, I mentioned before, but we have 5 speakers, and we will have then opportunity for questions and discussion at the end. And thank you again for everyone who is a willing presenter today, and also for everyone who is joining up as a participant as well. We look forward to hearing your questions and discussion throughout the meeting. And so I will go ahead and put warnings in the chat at 2 minutes and 1 minute, and then say time at 5 minutes just to keep the meeting on schedule. But first, I would like to welcome Jim Murphy to kick us off with our first talk on the EMA Northern Bering Sea Ecosystem Surface Trawl.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I apologize. My computer is acting up a little bit, so I don't have video. But I'll touch on some of the highlights of the Northern Bering Sea Ecosystem and Surface Trawl Survey. Now we've kind of adopted that as an NBEST, the acronym. The survey started in Dutch Harbor at August 30th, and we had a port call in Nome September 12th, and then it ended in Dutch Harbor on September 23rd. We conducted the survey off the fishing vessel Northwest Explorer, and you can see the photo there in the survey grid off to the right. So we'll go to the next slide. And I think a lot of times my presentations are graphic and visual, but just putting to make this as succinct as possible, I think some of the highlights were we saw a record abundance of age-0 pollock in the North Bering Sea. And we've been doing this survey for over 20 years. So that is a really good positive sign for I think the health of the pollock stocks in the Eastern Bering Sea in general. And the other species that is of particular interest to the survey is juvenile snow crab. So these would be really small snow crab with a carapace width of less than 15 millimeters. And we also saw a record abundance of these small snow crab. And we found them mostly in we typically find them up in the Bering Strait region. In general, we have above average forage base, but above average copepod abundance. A species that's been particularly concerned of particular concern is Chinook salmon. And although their abundance is still well below average, we did see a significant increase in their abundance from last year. It's almost twice as high as it was last year. So I think we're hopeful that this is an early indication of the recovery of the species. And the abundance of pink salmon was above average, but the abundance of forage fish species like capelin and herring still remain well below average. Next slide. Our challenges, we didn't have that many challenges other than trying to figure out how to spend money as part of the federal government. We had to complete some trawl repairs, and that took a long time. But we did finally get it to work out, and it just was an exceptional group of scientists, and we had just amazing support by the vessel's crew. And then there was kind of like our data outreach activities. We summarize time series of data to the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council as ecosystem considerations chapters. And so they're done the same year of the survey. Typically provide a straight science presentation at some point during the year. And of course, all of our salmon run size forecasts and outlooks are presented to scientists, managers, and stakeholders within the Yukon River. And this would be through the Joint Technical Committee and the Yukon River Panel. Next slide. So we deploy a variety of different gear types. And if you're interested in samples, if you're interested in data, just reach out to me and I will put you in touch with the coordinators for that data or that gear type, and can send you sample collection forms. And right now what we do is typically within a month of the survey, we make data available, and we have an R package now. It's called EMA Download. It's available on GitHub. And permanent archives are available on NCEI. Next slide. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim, and perfect timing. So, all right. And I know, Suzanne, you mentioned having a short presentation. So I would like to present or welcome you. If you have, I don't think we have slides for you. I don't know if you had some to share.
Yeah, I have slides to share. Sorry,
That's okay.
I was a
That's
little
okay.
bit confused.
I think you should be able
to share the screen.
To share your screen. I'll make you a co-host just in case.
Okay.
That gives you more capability.
That's what I'm doing here. Let's see if that works. Can you see it?
All right, perfect.
Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so my name is Suzanne McDermott. I'm the survey lead for the Alaska Science Center for the Aleutian Island Trawl Survey. I was also leading the Gulf of Alaska Trawl Survey last year. And I'm going to present on the Gulf of Alaska Bottom Trawl Survey and the Bering Sea Trawl Survey that we did last year. So I'm starting out with the Gulf. Here is the map that we're going all the way from basically islands up from mountains all the way to Southeast Alaska. And the different colors here are different strata for our survey. So we did 430 12 stations with 2 vessels. There's so much information that I just really kind of given you. This is what we did. The individual results can be found on talks that were more specific that we gave, and I can give you the links for those. So we did 430 stations in the Gulf, and our surveys assess biomass and abundance of all major groundfish species. So the results of that, there is a public talk we gave to the plan teams. You can look them up on the council website if you're interested. And there was just given a straight science talk in the Northern Bering Sea that's also public and recorded. What was kind of interesting this year was our bottom temperatures in the Gulf were about 1 standard deviation above average, whereas 23 and 21 were close to average. So we were like seeing this kind of cooler water. And last year was definitely warmer. And in the sea surface temperature were actually marine heat wave conditions. As I said, the survey biomass estimates were presented to the plan team. But because we had this government shutdown, those data were not incorporated into stock assessments, except for very few species. For example, Pacific cod in the Gulf got a special assessment done this year. Then this is the update for the Bering Sea. We did a full survey. So this is a systematic survey. So the area is divided into grid cells, and each grid cell gets a toe. And this year, can you see my mouse? Can you see it? So this is the border to the Northern Bering Sea. So this is what we call the Southeastern Bering Sea. This will be conducted every single year. And then every other year, or we're trying to do every other year now, we're also going into the Northern Bering Sea. So last year we went also into the Northern Bering Sea. And you can see that Northern Bering Sea, there's a 7-year kind of time series. And here is what we call our images of the bottom temperature, and we're really looking at the cold pool. The cold pool is water that is less than 2 degrees. The really dark blue is -1 degree, and then all the way out here, the light blue is 2 degrees. And we consider the cold pool kind of an indicator of fish distribution, because certain fish try to avoid this cold water. Some fish like this cold water, and it's an indication of kind of how warm the summer temperatures are. And you can see in 2025, we did have an extension of the cold pool further down, but the really cold water stayed almost all in the Northern Bering Sea. But it definitely is on par with 2023. You can see the really warm year in 2021, how far up this cold pool was, kind of as a comparison. And this kind of puts in place a lot of ecosystem, like sets the ecosystem up for certain kind of productivity and so on, which you might all know. This is just to give you an idea of the quantity of data we're collecting. 37,000 lengths, 1,300 otoliths, 1,200 stomachs, almost 600 maturity assessments. These are data on top of the counting and weighing and measuring of all the fish, what we're doing. And this, just to wrap it up, there is now a what we call fisheries one-stop shop where you can go and get the data. And there is a distribution mapping and analysis portal, which is also really handy. You can go in there and map the species distribution by year, and you can kind of see how the survey saw them. The data is now documented in the SCAP products in GitHub. So this is a really nice way for people to access these public data. They're public once they have been vetted through the plan team and council and all this, and they are now available for anyone to use in this format. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you so much.
So stop sharing.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Cancel.
All right. And as Katie is sharing again, I believe our next up is Maddie Smith. So I invite you to take it away.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm here to give a quick summary of a field project that we have that was primarily centered around a cruise that happened this last fall, but has some other kind of ongoing operations. The project is called Coastal Freeze. It's NSF funded by the Office of Polar Programs. And it's a special collaboration with COI's Jim Thompson and Emily Iden at UW and OSU, Oregon State. And I'm Maddie Smith, the lead, and I'm at Woodsville Oceanographic Institution. And overall, we are the primary activity I'm going to talk about in this review is a cruise that we had on the Sikuliaq last fall. Our cruise map is in the photo. I meant to put a zoomed out picture, but we were focused near Prudhoe Bay. We're on the Beaufort Shelf, looking at freeze-up processes very close to shore in the very coastal region. So looking at areas ranging from about 10 meters water depth to about 25 meters water depth. And this was all using, based from the Sikuliaq in the fall, where we were making ship-based measurements from the ship, using also small boat to get into many of the shallower sites, which you can see in the photo. And service of moorings, which are in the map, is the kind of larger orange and red, where we had seafloor measurements being made of the surface wave conditions, turbidity, temperature and salinity of the water column, as well as a number of other things. I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so the general questions that motivated the work that we're doing in this region is understanding the freeze up in the fall of the landfast ice. So understanding how this ice initially forms during the kind of transition after summer period. And so around this, so the things we're really interested in understanding is particularly how storms and waves associated with them mediate the formation of the ice and how that is redistributed to eventually become the landfast ice that grounds over the winter. So we're interested also in understanding then what's driving the spatial and temporal variability and when that ice forms, and especially when sediment from the seafloor gets into the ice. In this region, we see some sediment coming from the river plumes. So it's very coastal. Early in the summer, we saw a lot of turbid water associated with the outflow of the river. But late in the summer, we see, as the open water area is larger, we see a lot of resuspension from the waves and from the storms. And so as the ice begins to form, some of that sediment gets into the ice, and you can see some of that, especially in the upper image here. And this may be a mechanism for transporting some sediment away from the area. And so, yeah, so we're trying to understand the last question: does the relative timing of when these storms happen and when the freezing is happening impact both the ice formation, but also generally the transport of sediment on the shelf here? So the main early findings that we had during this period were that we saw a really notable upwelling event during the time that the Sikuliaq was in the area. I think I didn't put the dates on the slide, I'm sorry. We were there from mid-October, like October 17th to November 11th. And we saw some upwelling of pretty warm water, I think around 3 degrees Celsius to the surface, which caused ice retreat and delayed the advance of the ice. This is something that's been observed generally in the past, especially Bob Picard has a number of papers looking at upwelling in this area, but seeing it kind of this timing with that warm of water was really notable. And with the same kind of storm, we saw really strong turbidity signals and the formation of this really heavily sedimented ice that eventually kind of became the landfast ice. Next slide. Yes, we have a lot of observations around these questions that we'd be happy to share and collaborate on. Overall, the main challenges for the logistics largely related to there were some related to the time of year, but also there's just some challenges with the ship. We were delayed in leaving because of mechanical issues with the Sikuliaq, but we did get up there and made good observations for about 2 weeks in total. And yeah, really great data set that was overall successful from this period. We had a community observer aboard from UIC Science, kind of mediated through NSF's contract with Battelle. And that was awesome to provide connection with the communities. They provided a daily update and answered some of the questions that came in about the data and observations. There are kind of no particular concerns there. I also want to note that we did 2 educational live streams from the ship, which was awesome because of the better internet we have with Wow, Starlink. We were able to, I think, about 3,000 students between those two live streams that were able to kind of like be brought to the Arctic and onto the Sikuliaq. That was great. And overall, very like early career team, which was another success. Last slide, please. Oh yeah, there we go. That's my last slide. Yeah, so welcome collaborations, especially to tie in with other data sets that might be collected in this area. We're really interested in understanding overall the impacts of the physical processes we're observing for the coupled system. All of this data will eventually be archived on the Arctic Data Center, but these moorings that we put out are remaining through next summer, so will be archived then. In the meantime, some of the data from buoys that we had out is available at the links here, but I'd also be happy to share what we have so far if you contact me via email. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. Keeping it going, I would like to invite Chris Mao up to give a rundown on the Alaska Coastal Cooperative Convergence Science Cruise.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, happy to share this exciting cruise that happened on Sikuliaq this past summer. It was myself and Kay McMonigal, also from UAF, who were the leads on this cruise. And we had a really dynamic group of crew and participants spanning Alaska, very dynamic group of Indigenous and Western scientists. So that really made this convergence experience for everyone. And we sailed during the cruise from Seward all the way out, stopping in Chignik Bay and Atka, up past St. Paul to Hooper Bay, and then to stopping in Gamble and then into Nome. Many of these communities are part of this project. Next slide, please. And the goals of the cruise really mirrored the goals of the overall NNA Action Project. And this really makes this cruise very unique because it wasn't just a science cruise. The three goals included enhancing communication. And our project is really trying to build communication between university scientists, government agencies, and rural communities in Alaska. And then that brings out, building that communication. Then we're really trying to identify what the local priorities are to conduct research. And so bringing the ship in, we were able to do a number of research tasks along that line, such as sampling for water quality, carrying out bathymetric surveys to support storm flood modeling, and a number of other activities. And then the third goal is to build technical capacity. So this was also a training cruise. So we had various modules that we conducted, everything from marine navigation to co-production of research and topographic surveys to how to sew fur. So all kinds of unique tasks out there. Next slide, please. And, the challenges that we experience really feed right into our successes. And this was a very novel approach to a research cruise. And we really had a lot packed in here. Having those three goals, we were really trying to carry out some very creative knowledge exchange activities with communities and the people that were on the ship. And so this led us to activities from having barbecues in the port calls that we were having to training folks about wave buoys and how to deploy those to sampling water with the CTDs and various other mechanisms. We also did a lot of kind of these modules where students and researchers would learn about the different types of sciences being offered, both natural science and social science. So this was really this interdisciplinary effort. Next slide, please. And that those challenges fed right into the work that we did with the communities. And this is a picture of part of our tour of the ship in Chignik Bay. And during the port calls, we would bring the ship in. We would kind of launch a team off to do kind of different types of coastal hazard surveys on the land, and then we'd have the community members come onto the ship and learn about some of the science and capabilities of the ship. And so this is a group of people I've worked with for over a decade, and to be able to bring the ship in and carry out research that they identified that they wanted done, and then to have them be able to come on the ship and interact with Captain Christoph there, the first mate, and all the other crew was really empowering for them and for the crew itself. I think Sikuliaq really benefited from these types of activities during the process. Next slide, please. And during the cruise, we accomplished a number of tasks. And this picture here is kind of showing that convergence where we both were conducting science in the stern there. We were actually taking multi-cores here in Atka. You can see the village behind us in a place that the captain amazingly got the ship into to collect these cores to sample for different types of contaminants that might be in there. At the same time, we're cleaning up a caribou that some of the local hunters had brought the team out to collect. So we had this convergence going on in the cruise. We collected a number of different data sets, a lot of bathymetry. We deployed 9 wave buoys, 2 ocean moorings, and we were actually able, very fortunate to be able to go into 3 different communities and carry out port calls there. And that was kind of the most difficult part of this cruise, and the challenges were really the fact that we had a lot of uncertainty. But amazingly, both with the amazing crew and all their support, the captain's willingness to kind of work outside the box, and our amazing team that we brought together really made this a big success. So thank you.
Right. Thank you for sharing. And last up in this group, before we break for a 10-minute Q&A session, we have 2 cruises, and Heather Tabisola and Phyllis Domino to talk about both of them. So I welcome both of you.
Hello, I'm down here in Heather's office because my computer decided it would not work today. So I'd like to talk a bit about the spring and fall mooring cruise. Every year, FOSI conducts a spring cruise, usually out of Kodiak, ending in Dutch, doing the Bering Sea, and a fall cruise similar. Shown below are the 2 kind of maps. The spring cruise was limited by ice, and the fall cruise went all the way up north of St. Lawrence. The ice this last year, as people have mentioned, in the spring was a bit odd. It melted out in the north and left behind a halo in the south of just a band of ice. And under that band of ice was a pretty extensive bloom. We've sampled it both, a variety of ways. With the shutdown, we're behind in processing the data and the samples, but we'll hopefully move forward soon. M2, which is our southern long-term mooring, the ice never reached much past St. Paul, the Pribilof Islands. So it remained warm this year and was among the warmer years that we've had recently. The interesting part is the ice in the north was pretty persistent and melted and everything. So M8, which is just south of St. Lawrence, which has had warm bottom temperature, well, warm is a relative thing, above 0 bottom temperatures, was very cold this last year. Next. So shown here is just some of the early findings. One of the, as was said earlier, the cold pool was limited and pretty strong in the north, once again, because of the ice situation. We saw large copepods. The highest concentration of those were in the north with the colder temperatures. Oh, yeah, that didn't update. Yeah, it's the other one. So shown in the next panel over is just the temperatures at M2 and the timing of the spring bloom, which is late this year, it appeared to be from our observations. The lower right shows the 31 years at M2, and you can see how warm the surface temperatures were at M2, and the bottom temperatures were also above average. While M8, you can see those very cold. We put new technology out this year. Measuring the water column is really important to us. But if you have ice, the ice wins every single time. So if you have a surface mooring, if the ice comes down, that's the end of that mooring. So we have a new type technology. We deployed 2 of them this last year, one in the northern Bering Sea, which is M14, which is just north of St. Lawrence, between St. Lawrence and Nome, basically. And it worked all year. It gave us the water column structure from top to bottom, and we sank it when ice was appearing to arrive on the scene. If everything goes as planned, which I'm sure it will rise again in probably somewhere around May with ice retreat. And then we'll begin to get this type of continuous sampling again, temperature, salinity, fluorescence, etc. Next.
Should be earned.
So I've mentioned a few of these things already. One of the things that both Seth Danielson and I had problems with were our sediment traps this last year. Both of them, all of them basically didn't sample the whole year. We're not quite sure what went wrong, but it was disturbing because we've had pretty good luck with those in the past few years. The other big problem is M2 has a prowler on it, which gives us water column temperature in real time every hour, basically. For whatever reason, it also decided not to function this year. We recovered some of the data, but it didn't transmit anything. So I think one of the big successes is the ice collection of in the ice, marginal 30% ice cover. And we did a lot of sampling in that phytoplankton, phytoplankton or algae bloom that was occurring in that region. And we hope to have those samples completed, analyzed in the next few months. For the first time in probably 20 years, the spring mooring crews did deep measurements in the southeastern basin, and it's called the dog leg. It hasn't been done for a number of years, but we're beginning to look at it again in collaboration with the CO2 group. But one of the interesting things is the deep water fish larvae that they found on that in fairly high concentrations. In addition to M14, there was a rise mooring at C2, which is on Icy Cape. It also functioned well. Okay.
5-minute warning.
Yeah, next one. And other people will talk about the Arctic cruise. It was very successful once again with all the moorings turned around, etc. But someone else will talk mainly about that next. Okay. And unique observations. As I mentioned, technology is what is going to allow us to do things. Last year, we deployed 3 pop-up buoys. They all rose to the surface. The bad news is without extensive ice in the northern Bering, they didn't come up under ice. But this one that we deployed in the Chukchi did, and we're just in the process of processing that set of data. And next one.
Hey, give a shout out for Gay, because I know you're posting them. Straight science from the Sekuliak.
And finally, the data, we're, like I said, a bit behind in processing the data, largely because of the government shutdown. Hopefully we'll have it processed in the next few months, and the samples will take a little bit longer. You can see where the links are to the government or to the data. And if you're interested in anything, please contact Heather or I. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to see all the straight science talks, and I know Chris just popped another talk in there, so it's great to see all the outreach going on amongst all these cruises. But I would like to invite us for a 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes for Q&A. And so please feel free to either raise your hand, ask a question, or come off mute and ask a question, or you can also pop them in the chat, and it can be directed towards any or all of the cruises that have been discussed thus far in this chunk of talks.
Well, this is Gay Sheffield up here in Nome, and I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who does those street sciences. And I encourage people to look at those or watch those to see what the local people are what we're all being told on the coast, and how that information is being relayed to people here. So thank you so much. For anybody who wants to do one, we're happy to do them. They make a difference. Thank you so much.
All right. Yes. Quiet group today.
Well, if nobody feels like they have questions now, maybe we can save it all for the discussion at the end, so we can just keep chugging ahead with talks.
I would jump in. I have one question for Chris. It's great to hear your reflection and a report back from your cruise, and it seems like that's sort of a different blend of cruise gold than some of the other research groups. And I'm just curious for your reflection on that, having done sort of more cruises that are more focused on specifically like Western research goals, and then this more convergence kind of discussion or framing, how that was for you all. It sounds like it went well, and what you would recommend for the future if you think this is something that's likely to continue forward.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, it certainly was a very unique cruise, and I think that had, a lot of benefits to it. It also raised a lot of challenges because we were trying to we had this threefold mission. And so everything we did, we wanted to keep that mission in mind. And I think what it did is it really brought a lot of meaning to the research, direct meaning, like the people on the ship were needing the data that we were collecting to make decisions in their communities. And so I think that's a critical thing. We collected and filled a number of different data gaps, a lot of bathymetry, a lot of kind of oceanographic data that they needed to model flooding and erosion and things like that. And so that ability to actually directly provide that data to the community members was powerful. Our goal is to continue these. We kind of see this first one as the grand experiment. I thought it could have been a total disaster bringing all these people together with this varying missions, and it wasn't, because we had this great team. The crew of the ship was really amazing. Doug Baird and others, and Colleen Strawhacker that supported this idea were amazing. And I think that it is really a great way to utilize these ships, this resource that we have, not just for that physical science, but also to bring those build those bridges to rural Alaskans.
Yeah, David.
Question for Phyllis, if anyone.
Why don't you go ahead, Rebecca, and I'll ask my follow-up question for Chris after that. Go for it.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand was up. No, you go first.
Cheers. Thanks. Chris, I did want to ask, as a follow-up to Hazel's question, were you pivoting in real time with the community, with the plans for observations, or how did you actually plan this cruise? Did you have some early teams that actually went into communities and asked for needs, or how did you actually execute and plan this cruise? Thanks.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, all of the communities that we visited, we have a multi-year, 4 to 8 year relationship with. So we really knew what the priorities were through previous meetings. And prior to the cruise, we had about 8 months of monthly meetings with everyone participating, bringing the community members, bringing some of the community stakeholders, tribal administrators and so forth. And so there was a lot of that pre-planning that went into it. So we really kind of knew some of the specifics, but there was a lot of unknowns too, kind of like as we got closer to a community, a couple days out, some of those plans solidified, especially on the outreach side, kind of like what's going to be best for your community. Do you want to bring people on the ship? Do we want to have a cookout? Like, do you want to participate in some of the research that we're doing? So some of those calls were very kind of last minute. But we're looking now, we're writing a new proposal to do this a couple more times. And, one of the facts in that proposal is we want to go to the community ahead of time and really spend that time in the planning, because there's a lot of planning to do to really co-produce the research that we did. And we needed even more of that. So in this next proposal, we're going to say we're going to go to the community first and really spend some days actually planning this out.
Thank you. And Rebecca.
Yeah, so mine was a technical question for Phyllis. I want to hear more about this mooring that can go up and down and hide from the ice. But if you don't have time for that, we can do it some other time offline.
I can send you the figure. Can you hear me? Okay, I can send you the figure of how it works. You deploy as a surface mooring. It has a float on the surface, and it has a prowler, which is an instrument that climbs up the cord and falls, and so you get measurements, as rapidly how much wave energy you have. It remains on the surface until ice. We put predetermined date, but we can also sink it earlier if we need to. It sinks to the bottom. Ice has a very distinctive sound. So we say, for instance, the northern one, we said, after I think I said something like May 1st, if it doesn't hear ice for 10 days, come back to the surface and begin sampling again. The exact date of looking or listening for ice varies on the station, on kind of what's the approximate day that you expect the ice to return. Yeah, it's a guess. So then it provides temperature, salinity, fluorescence, hopefully in the future, oxygen and a few other parameters in real time, which is pretty useful, being able to see what's happening right away as we get older in patience. Do you want me to send you a document on it? Would you like
Yes,
that,
please.
Rebecca?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm quite jealous.
Okay, I'll send you something so you can see it, okay?
All right. Any other questions percolating in people's minds? Yes. Gay, I see your hand is raised.
Not a question, but just to let everyone know, because I see in my emails, there's a question about the Port of Nome being operational or not, because the Deep Draft Port Expansion Phase 1 will be in effect. So that will be building on, if you're familiar with the Port of Nome, the West Jetty, they will be starting to, that is a go for this spring. They'll be moving rocks and equipment in the beginning of the season. The port is not anticipated to close at any point. It's going to look a little bit like a Tetris game, but they say we will be able to remain open. And the real rock dropping this year and sort of having the cranes in the water won't happen until they're planning on August. So my guess is probably later as things are going. So that's my announcement there. I hope that answers that. So the Port of Nome will remain open throughout, they say, throughout the duration of the expansion. And this year will probably be the less Tetris, figuring out how you can utilize so little dock space. But we will be open. Thank you.
All right. And yeah, thank you for that update. Looks like we might be at a good transition period to start up the next set of talks. But if any questions pop into your mind, please feel free to ask them when we come to the next Q&A session or discussion session. So I will hand it off to Katie to kick off the next set of talks.
Awesome. I'm going to share again. Okay. We are starting this session with Rebecca talking about Bering Strait Mooring Project. So whenever you're ready.
Hi, thanks, Katie. Yes, so this is a project with my co-PI, Cecilia Peralta-Ferez, who is joining us at some stage when she gets off another meeting. And this is the continuation of our long-term moorings in the Strait. I think this is actually the longest in the water record from the Arctic. So it started in 1990 and has been focused initially on physical properties, and then since 2022 we've started adding biogeochemical to that. We're very excited about that. So it's a series of the core of 3 moorings that you see here is black dots, A2, A3, A4, and between them they can measure. We can prove the mean properties of the entire flow through the Bering Strait and up into the Arctic. It's funded by the Arctic Observing Network, NSF, which funds us till recovery this year, and we're seeking further funding at the moment. So this is our cruise track from this year, which was we got weathered out quite a lot. There's a lot of blue lines you see where we're just transiting or hanging out the red give us CTD stations and the green give water sampling. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is the core of our measurement is looking at this long-term time series. So on the left here, you now have annual means of temperature in red, salinity in green, and flow transport in blue. And these are still showing significant trends for warming, freshening, and flow increase over the whole record. If you look into the details, you see things bounce up and down a lot. The last period, we've gone back to another warm period, 22 to 24, after a sort of a cold year in 2021. But they're not as warm as the sort of the late 2020s, the 2025 to 20 zone. We've gone back to fresh times again in the last year, and that's interesting because that can be sufficiently fresh that it changes how the waters ventilate the Arctic Ocean. So there's big changes that can occur there, which we're seeing in those flip-flops. What we're still seeing is an increasing fluxes of heat, fresh water, and we think nutrients into the Arctic, even though we haven't been measuring the nutrients all that long. What we have done shows a fair invariance of nutrient concentrations in the winter. And that means that most of the flux, the variability in the flux of the Arctic is dependent on the variability of the flow. So as the flow has been increasing, we're putting more nutrients up into the Arctic Ocean. Okay, oh yeah, I just want to say that. So the nutrients that are coming through the Bering Strait provide almost all of the nutrients to the upper 50 meters of the Arctic Ocean. So if you care about the Arctic ecosystems, you care about how much water you're bringing in through here. Okay, hit return if you would. The other thing we're excited about is we're just finishing off a new data set, which is using the upward-looking instruments on the moorings to give us ice thickness and ice motion. When we have this final, hopefully later this year, we will have time series going from 2002 to the present. I've put a teaser data set there that shows you the season mean ice draft, the different colors of their different moorings, but you see very strong interannual variability in that, but interestingly no trend over the period we're looking at. So that's to come, and we're going to have that out, 30-minute data for everybody to use as soon as we can. So watch this space for that. Okay, next. Challenge and success is weather. We went in July this year. I didn't expect it to be so bad, but it was quite bad weather for us. But nonetheless, we got the main thing of what we tried to do done, which is the moorings recovered and redeployed, hydrographic sessions run. We had some new interesting collaborations this year. Perhaps the most exciting one was with Tom Ferrugia from AUS, who put an underway system on the ship for measuring for harmful algal blooms. And so that was taking water samples every half hour and actually identified a harmful algal bloom as the ship transited to the south. And we got that put out as a warning to the communities. So that was very exciting. We put out a glider for these colleagues. You can see there trace metal sampling, phytoplankton. I'd say again, if you want anything sampled from our cruises, please do get in touch, or if you want to add instruments to the moorings, please do get in touch. We love making these sorts of collaborations. And next. Yeah, so our data is all available at the National Centre for Environmental Information, but perhaps it's easier to find it at our website. We have their data products, which are monthly means and annual means. And if there's other things you think you want, please get in touch and see what we can do to provide that. We try and make our text files easy to read. We want people to use the data, try and put as many figures in as we can. So do get in touch if there's anything there you don't want or you want to collaborate. We'd love that. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll move to Shana to talk about backyard buoys.
Hi, everyone. Make sure you can hear me.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Well, thanks, everyone. Great job in introducing AU. So thanks. I'll put a link on there of all of the IFCB data are also now on the various cruises are located on the AU's data portal. So just putting in a plug-in for some of the other work that AU's works on. So today I'm just doing a quick discussion on our backyard buoy program that AU's funds. We are working with two groups, the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, AWC, and then Nalakuk out of the Quinnahock-Cusco region. We work with them to deploy SOFAR ocean spotter wave buoys, and they're deployed and owned by subsistence hunters in these communities during kind of the open water season. The villages this year have been Quinnahock, Savunga, Gamble, Point Hope, Wainwright, Utqiagvik, and Koktovik. And this funding source has been, it started out in 2021 as the National Science Foundation funding through the Convergence Accelerator Program. It is now transitioned to NOAA IU's Inflation Reduction Act funding, and we have that funding through 2028. Next slide. So this year we had a great new partner with Nalakuk. They deployed 3 buoys in the Cusco Bay near outside of Quinnahock, but in that kind of region there, with high interest and interaction and engagement from the search and rescue groups. And we're looking to deploy 3 more and maybe doing some microswip buoys. Jim Thompson, I know you're on. I just sent an email. We're looking to connect you with them. They're interested in doing some more work there. With Whaling Commission, they had quite a few out this year. Again, not as many as the last year. And we're still kind of working through how this works. We did have a new Canadian buoy is what we called it. It departed from its mooring off of Koktovik and traveled for about a month. And you can see that map above that went all the way over into way heavy into Canada. These data are now available on the AU's data portal for download. And so it was transmitting this entire time. So there's some really good information on sea surface temperature and wave information if anyone is interested in taking a closer look at those. We also had 2 right off of Utqiagvik that separated and kind of traveled around in circles back and forth across Point Barrow. And again, those data are also available on our data portal. So if any of you physical oceanographers are interested in looking at that, we would love for that information to be looked at a little bit more. The Snow Coon buoy, that's just kind of a fun picture by John Hobson Jr. of Wainwright. This was the buoy that was deployed in the Wainwright Lagoon, and they went and got it around October 7th, and it had this snow cone of ice over, and it was still transmitting data, so that was pretty cool. The Gamble and Savunga one, and this is something that Chris Mayo, we really appreciate you helping these groups. They deployed their own buoy through the program he just talked about earlier, and then they deployed these ones. These ones were pulled immediately under, so there's really not any data available for those, but we're still working with those. And so now there's 3 years of wave data available in these communities, all on our the data portal. Next slide. So just some of the challenges, we had the new part or the successes. We had a new program with Nalakuk. AWC hired a new program coordinator. Our Friends of Backyard Buoys program was really cool. And Chris Mayo and some of the other teams were able to get the data from their SOFAR buoys, the Swift buoys, and I think now all of the seeded buoys are on there. So a lot of the resources are available on our backyardbuoys.org website. 18 buoys were deployed, all were community led. We're still kind of working on the right mooring for the different locations and the engagement with the facilitators of keeping them engaged through the year. The hard part is when we need them to go out and check, when they need to check on the buoys, this is the same time they're hunting. So kind of finding that balance. And the final slide is the most important. Here's where you get the data. So the Backyard Buoys app is live. You can download it on your smartphone. And this app was developed in coordination with subsistence hunters from all of our 3 regions that are working on this. The data are also available on the portal as approved by AEWC and Nalakuk. These are their data. They agreed to share it. There's data also from the Pacific Northwest and Pacific Islands. And the Friends of Backyard Buoys, if you're unclear on this, reach out to me. If you're deploying SOFAR buoys or other wave buoys, we can make sure that these data are available on the app for anyone to take a look at. That's all I got. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to Jessica Krantz.
Great, thank you very much. Jess Krantz here at the Marine Mammal Lab, Alaska Fisheries Science Center. Going to be chatting you guys about the results from the IWC Power Survey. This survey, it was conducted basically all of August and September this year. Port of call was Dutch Harbor. Up in the southern Chukchi Sea, we didn't have any predetermined track lines. The primary focus for that region was to just photo ID and biopsy as many gray whales as possible to try and get at some stock structure. So we focused our efforts in that darker blue square. And then in the central Bering Sea, the black lines there showing our track lines. It was a standard visual line transect survey. We would also photo ID and biopsy any large whales that we encountered. And then we also had passive acoustics included using sonobuoys. And so next slide, please. So briefly, some results. One of the big ones from the southern Chukchi was the overall condition of the gray whales. A lot of the animals that we saw, they were a little on the thin side, not emaciated, just not as robust as we would like to see. But they did seem to have higher cyanid loads, some skin lesions, as you can see in those photos there. The plot on the right, the dark gray circles are the location of all of our gray whale sightings, and the black line is our vessel track. Just so you can see, they were concentrated within that hotspot region in the Hope Basin. We did also have a lot of fin and humpback whales, but as they were not the target species, those sightings were all just considered off effort for those species. Next slide, please. So then just briefly, some of the large whale results for our track lines. We did have fewer fin whales than we expected in 2025, especially in comparison with 2018, which you can see on the right. We only had 65 sightings of 92 animals compared to a much higher number in 2018. And just for the record, the numbers shown for 2018 do not include the sightings seen in that right whale habitat. These are just the on-effort transect sightings. So overall, fewer fin whales than we had expected. Next slide, please. And the same goes also for humpback whales. Much fewer whales sighted in 25 than we were expecting, again, especially in comparison with that same area in 2018. And again, these are just for the line transect data. Next slide, please. Now these plots here are showing acoustic detections. We did not, unfortunately, have any right whale sightings. We did finish our transect lines early, so we spent about 5 days in the critical habitat at the end of the survey in kind of mid-late September. We only detected right whales within one single 24-hour period. We did not get a visual sighting. And when you compare that with, for example, 2017, you can see on the right, we had quite a few acoustic detections. We ended up sighting 12 different right whales in that year. So pretty stark contrast between the 2 years. And we do think that this is a result of the warmer conditions, as you heard from Phyllis's talk. M2 was kind of right where most of those right well detections are in 2025. And it was a warm year. We do now, know that right wells will kind of move further north and follow that cold pool. So we just suspect they were further north, and we did not detect them this year. Next slide, please. So challenges, luckily, really the only challenge we faced was just an overabundance of fog and rain. Thank you, Mary. Even more so than usual, which is very difficult when you try to do a visual survey. But the successes, again, this year, I would email the local villages and communities every morning with our vessel position, our planned activities, any species seen or anything unusual to report, as well as how they could reach the vessel if needed. And so we did receive positive feedback regarding this communication. And so any future surveys in that region, we will again be sure to maintain that level of communication. Next slide, please. And then finally, so data sharing collaborations. The Marine Mammal Commission will likely be using a lot of our gray whale data in an upcoming workshop. Again, just because we did see so many lesions and heavy cyanid loads. I do plan on giving a straight science talk that's currently scheduled for 26th of March, where I'll be going into much more detail about the results, more species. So please tune in for that. And then, yep, thank you. With regards to using these data, you can put in a formal request through the IWC if you want to use their data, for example, the photo ID data, the biopsy data, and there's a link to where you would go for that. But also the cruise reports are all posted online. The 2025 cruise report is not yet there, but it should be shortly. So you can always go there to find the cruise reports and look at the data there. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me as well for any questions. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And then we have Irina's up next.
Thank you, Katie. My name is Irina Trukhanova. I am a contractor wildlife biologist with Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'm a co-lead on the Pacific Walrus Population Abundance Estimation Project, together with Dr. Bill Beatty, who was supposed to present today, but unfortunately lost his voice, so I'm presenting instead. So latest Pacific Walrus research expedition happened last June, between June 2nd and June 30th. We left from Nome and we were working on board the Norseman 2 in southern Chukchi Sea. And this was the second year of data collection out of 3-year-long project to examine population dynamics of Pacific walruses. And the ultimate goal of this project is to estimate a number of parameters, including abundance, survival rates, reproductive rates, and population trends for Pacific walrus. So we collected data in 2023, and then we were out there again in 2024, but unfortunately couldn't collect any samples because our vessel got stuck in ice north of the Bering Strait. And then we were successful again in 2025 in collecting samples. And we are hoping to have another expedition in 2026 if the funding becomes available. And the last 3 expeditions were funded by Fish and Wildlife Service and U.S. Geological Survey. Next slide. Thank you. So last year in June, we encountered pretty challenging ice conditions. There was quite a lot of ice that remained in the area through the end of June, and there was an ice bridge that connected mainland Alaska with Chukotka, Russia, that prevented us from moving further north. We were really hoping to go to the Ledyard Bay and work along the North Slope, Alaska, where the walruses were aggregating at the time. However, we couldn't get past Cape Lisburne and had to limit our study area to southern Chukchi, where we encountered pretty high but moderate aggregations of Pacific walruses. The weather conditions were also not ideal. We had a lot of windy days, high winds, high swells, but nevertheless, we were able to collect over 1,200 biopsy samples from walruses pulled out on ice. And we also collected age and sex composition data from over 1,800 animals. On top of that, we collected a number of samples for our partners. We collected harmful algae bloom samples and then sampled for contaminants, microplastics, and a lot of other auxiliary projects. And currently, the walrus data are being analyzed. And all of those data will feed into our population model that we are developing for this project. And an interesting observation during this cruise was that we encountered a very high number of polar bears in the study area. Typically, you would see 1 or 2 bears during these expeditions, but this year we documented 53 polar bear sightings and observed at least 5 predation events. And I'll just take an opportunity to invite everyone who's attending Alaska Marine Science Symposium next week to listen to our talk on Tuesday at 2 p.m. talking about polar bear sightings. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So we felt that this year our outreach was pretty successful. We collaborated with Eskimo Walrus Commission, and we had 3 Alaska Native hunters working on board the Norseman with us. We also presented our project plans and updates to the communities through a number of outreach events, including Straight Science Seminar. We also reached out to the communities via emails and phone calls and provided them with radio channel for communication. This year, we also added a regular communication with other partners and stakeholders through bi-weekly emails that we sent out during the field expedition. And currently, we are working on developing interpretive fact sheets to share on social media that's talking about the project. And I think the main lesson learned this year was that despite very, very challenging ice conditions and weather conditions, we were capable of having a successful expedition and collect enough samples. And I think that's possible as long as the ship remains mobile and doesn't get stuck. And last slide. So if the expedition 2026 does happen, we will be open to collecting some limited data for other teams if there is interest, and we can also discuss birth space if that's available. And the data will be available through Alaska Science Center website once analyzed and processed. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And lastly, we have Jackie.
Right, thank you so much. Great talks. I'm going to give you 2 brief overviews for cruises that the DBO was involved with. The first one was in July with the Canadian Coast Guard on the Sir Wilfrid Laurier. This was our 25th year working on that vessel between the DBO and the Canada's 3 Ocean program. Next. And what you can see on the next slide in the current one is that the cruise map, standardized observing system, the DBO 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I would point out that the 4, because as already been mentioned, we had heavy ice in the northern East Chukchi Sea. We had to cancel some of those stations offshore. But the chief scientist was Paul McCon. We worked with the Department of Fisheries Oceans Canada. We mobilized in Nome on the 16th and demobbed up Panutiavik on the 28th. Our funding from the NSF, and you can see the various components there. We have collaborators at UMSI, University of Maryland, Clark University. Fish and Wildlife did the seabird and marine mammal observations, and others. And we did communicate with through the Alaska Eskimo Walrus Commission and also through various meetings with Alaska coastal communities. Next. One of the things that key questions, and briefly, this was, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but the key goal is to use the DBO as a change detection array. So we do measurements, everything from the physics, chemistry, biology, lower and upper trophics on that, and we're tracking ecosystem status and change, looking at key drivers, and it was initiated in 2010, but based on previous data sets. We are, there's also underwater observations, water column work, and sea floor animal collections. Next. And so some of the key observations here, we did have heavier than normal, as I mentioned, in the Northeast Chukchi Sea. This was our 25th year. We do collections of phytoplankton and zooplankton for both population and genomics. We're using the macrobenthic fauna as important multi-decadal time series. They're particularly important for prey for walruses, gray whales, as we all know, diving sea ducks. And so a lot of the analyses we're looking at is the comparison on changes we're seeing, declines in certain areas on populations of prey for like gray whales specifically, diving ducks up in the south of St. Lawrence Island, and for walruses. The particular summary I have here is a survey from Seabirds that Liz Lubunsky's group put together. That was great having them on the bridge, and this is what we do on both of these cruises I'll mention. There are 7 marine mammal species that were observed. I would note that there are 233 walruses because they were up on the northeast where the ice was, and so that provided quite the information that we were interested in, but also a lot for good morale. The gray whales were primarily in DBO3, which is north of Bering Strait. In the past, we've seen them primarily south of Bering Strait, but we've known that's moving northward and their traditional feeding area, but we're seeing very much of a decline in benthic prey base for gray whales. And then we saw sea ice flows up in the DBO 4 and 5, as you might expect with the sea ice. And on the right, you're seeing the combined Canadian U.S. Participants on that cruise. Next. So as far as challenges, we as a foreign vessel, the way it is, it was they're asking for 30K in Nome to be able to come to the docks, so that wasn't something that was in the budget. So we had small boat operations, and so we had to stay 3 miles offshore. And the weather was kind of dicey. We all got on safely, but it's bringing us forethought of with the activities going on in Nome, whether they should go back to going through out of Dutch, and that's something under discussions with the Canadians right now. We did, even though we had a delay by 1 day, we were able to occupy every one of the observing lines that we wanted to, except for when the ice occupied that offshore too heavy for access. Safety was a priority. It's a Coast Guard vessel. And so very good interactions. Like I said, I have longevity, Lee and I, beyond most people on the ship. But some of the people that are captain now were actually crew when we first joined. So it's great. The crew and science party had very good interactions. We did meet up with the Copries Aeron icebreaker on DBO3 line, which made for some good interactions, both waving and at each other, but also collecting data on the same line for comparisons. And then we had a community talk of our research prior to our departure, known the Straight Science Talk. So thank you, Gay, for facilitating that. And we're working with the UIC for post-cruise discussions as we've had in the past up in Nuttiavik. Next. And as far as the data sharing, the key parameters, you can see, go back one. These are the measurements that we do as part of our core on this particular cruise. As I've mentioned before, there's the links to the data collections there. We did have the 8th DBO data meeting in Korea last October, and those data sets and that report will be coming out on the Pacific Arctic Group and DBO line soon for that. And then you can also go to our website there at the DBO CBL MCS.edu, and you can get updates on all the activities on the observing system. Next. Now for the Sikuliaq cruise, we had that it's a joint cruise of 4 major program funded by NOAA, also by you kind of screamed me out there, but Ambon, CEO, DBO, and EcoFoci. So that's the Arctic Marine Biodiversity Observing Network that Katrin Eichen has the lead on, Chukchi Ecosystem Observatory that Seth has the lead on, Seth Danielson, the DBO that Lee and I have on the observing system with our funding through NOAA and NSF, and then EcoFoci that Phyllis has already presented on for the ecosystem, fisheries, and oceanography. And on the bottom, you can see all the funders on there. So, and there's a group composite by Office of Naval Research and NOAA on the funding and for the cruise. Next, and that's us happy people on the cruise picture. So the research questions, the cruise was the 12th to the 29th of August. You can see here we've added now, we had the Icy Cape line that's been occupied for a very long time for EcoFoci. We had over 15 moorings. Those are highlighted in the purple on the map to the right. And Phyllis mentioned that already. So we're looking at ecosystem changes amongst all those 4 programs. We're looking at status and change, biodiversity, looking at the environmental key drivers, physics, chemistry, sediment type for benthic populations, and going to time series sites. And we had pre and post cruise discussions with the AEWC. And we maintained a daily communication. So there was a report out to all the coastal communities and all the participants that were interested in it. And I think that was very well received from the word we got back from the cruise. Next. So then we moved on to scientific questions. I think I've already kind of mentioned that already in the previous slide. Key things we're doing from physics to chemistry to biology. But on this particular cruise, we spent time on looking at harmful algal blooms. So we had an IFCB running during the cruise. And then they were looking at changes in temperature and currents on predator-prey interactions. So it's quite a bit of connection with the lower and upper trophic levels. Next, I think we can go on with the key. You can see the brief parameters. As far as observations, surface temperatures, as we expected, there were warmer temperatures in the Bering and into the southern, with a lot colder in the north, especially with the ice being there. We did have the imaging flow cytobot on board, and EV Vashon was tracking that. There was a patch on the 16th of August in the DBO2 area, which is the Chirikov Basin. It wasn't something that needed to be heavy, but it was the highest we saw on the cruise that was needed. But it was reported through the appropriate channels, the elevated concentration of Alexandrium. The NOAA team, they do hotspot evaluation of the zooplankton. Got it. And found that the south of DBO and DBO2 and the Chirikov, south and north of Bering Strait, were both copepods, decapods, and euphausids. The large euphausids were mostly off of Icy Cape in the northern part of the study area. We are seeing biodiversity and populations changes in the benthic system. These are long time series. We'll be talking about there at upcoming meetings at Ocean Sciences and Arctic Science Summit Week. I would just point out on the left, this is really nice, these pictures from the larval Arctic cod, as well and the lipid-rich copepods, which are very important for hypertrophic organisms. Thankfully, they collected krill samples for our component, and we were doing so to relating those to gray whale prey quality, which is a paper that's being submitted. I keep reading these notes. On the right-hand side, the invertebrate catch, this is Katrin Eichen's photo here of the bottom trawl, but I would point out, as it was shown on Phyllis's slide, that first finding of a Hanasaki king crab in the Chukchi Sea. And so previously it was just in the Bering Sea, so this is a subarctic species, an Asian one, and so it was seen further north. Next. So as far as the challenges and successes, we were very successful. We were not except for the timing, we couldn't do the DBO5, but we did that on the previous cruise. We did all the eco-foci stations. Safety is a priority thing of the Sikuliak, so interactions were friendly. We retrieved the NOAA and UAF moorings, but Phyllis was right. The sediment traps did not work either in the northern, the DBO1 area or DBO4. But we did succeed in getting the benthic imaging system, some great 10,000 photos that are being evaluated by Savanda Sandy and Seth. Daily log was a big success, I think. And then Katrin and Lee Cooper put together a joint science talk from the ship and on the whole cruise results. And that was given as we were transcending back to Nome. Next slide, I think, is the last one. And that is a data archiving similar to what I had before. We are putting data sets both in the DBO data archive at the Arctic Data Center, as well as the NCEI, the MBON site. The genomics data goes to the biotechnology of NCBI, the pelagic database. So you can see those, and also data going to OBIS. Next. I think that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone in the second group for their presentations. And we're going to take 10 minutes to ask questions specifically to those presenters, and then we will move into a group discussion. So does anybody have any questions?
I have one. I don't have time to put my hand up. I had a question to Jessica Grant. On the gray whales that you saw in the north of Bering Strait, do they have mud plumes? So were they feeding on the bottom, or do you think they were water column feeding?
We did see quite a bit of mud plumes. Yeah, so they were benthic feeding.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for Jessica too. Jessica, you said that you had a lot less humpbacks on 2025 than 2018. Do you feel like they are too far north now out of your scope, or do you feel they were somewhere other than north? And I guess I don't know if you know that. I can't remember if your cruise track went all the way up, but we were, there's reports humpbacks and gray whales were here all fall into December. So
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I suspect a lot of them were farther north. Unfortunately, our track lines, the way they were randomly designed, there weren't any official track lines kind of in the Chirikov Basin north of St. Lawrence, and we didn't have any official track lines in the Hope Basin in southern Chukchi. We did see quite a few humpbacks and fins in the southern Chukchi. And those times when we were transiting, when we had decent visibility in the Chirikov Basin, we did see some humpbacks and fins. But overall, yeah, I think it's a combination of kind of track line placement and the whales probably being farther north than where we were.
Yeah, we're kind of seeing a whole sea lions too, right? Sea lions too. So we're seeing the whole lengthier stay of our southern visitors. They're not summer southern visitors anymore. They're here for quite a long period of time. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, David.
Hi, I think I might know the answer to this question, but it seems like Jackie, Seth, and Lee and Katrin sort of saw most of the walruses, where Arina, you got to see most of the polar bears. I wonder whether there's an opportunity to share information and data on some of those observations, since I think U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in either case was going to be the primary recipient of those data. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say, this is Jackie, that I think the polar bears, if I was correct, when they were working in the southern Chukchi, where they saw all those, but all our walruses were in the northern Chukchi by the time they had it. But since all that data is related to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so I think there's definitely a built-in connection with the folks in Anchorage with those data sets. So I think it's just a matter of sharing with, get a hold of Liz Lubunsky.
Thank you, Jackie.
And I would just say something. There was a question about the Sikuliak, and I know that I think the Sikuliak is going forward with the North Pacific Research Board. Danielle's on board, so at least it would be up there for that and other cruises. But I noticed as a note that the next couple of weeks we'll probably be able to answer that question: what cruises, what projects will be going forward.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. I wasn't invited to the ship scheduling meeting, but I know that they're having one right now. So I think the answer is we'll tell you when we know. Yeah.
Yep, David.
To this conversation, I'll just add that at least last week on the Arctic Icebreaker Coordinating Committee meeting, the Sikuliak only had, I think, a top line of 30 days committed to work in the Arctic for this year, but it's possibly as low as 17 days at sea committed. So hopefully, some of the clarity that will come with the passage of a budget will as Gabriel noted, provide some more clarity on utilization of the ship writ large. And since I already have the floor, I will note that we continue to have a desire to work with the Sikuliaq this year, since we encountered some challenges with working on the NOAA ship Brown. But at this current juncture, we don't have a pathway toward funding. So we're again hoping that there'll be additional clarity that will arise as a result of the passage of a 26 budget. Thanks.
Well, I was going to ask Rebecca then because you have nutrients on there on the sensors, right, on your moorings, and I was wondering if I know you made some generic statements. Is the system working well, and are you putting it's out there now, and you'll be
It's
able to get your
beautiful.
data sets for next
Yes, it's
bullet?
beautiful. We love it to bits. So they are Suna nitrate sensors. They've given us very good readings through now. We've got 3 years, I think, recovered. What we see is a lot of variation in the duration of the summer bloom, but in winter we find that the nutrient concentrations reset to a number which seems to be quite consistent year to year. So that's quite intriguing to us. There remains a variation across the strait in nutrient values, and that's in the GRL paper that we got out this summer. I can send you that if you've not seen it. So we're very excited about those data and looking at the fluxes into the Arctic, because there's an implication that the nitrate flux up into the Arctic has increased. So what we're seeing is more coming through, and now I'm intrigued of looking to the south to try and work out what might be setting those concentrations as they're coming up. And I have some ideas about that. And I'd happily talk to people offline, but probably not on something that's being recorded at this point, because we're still tossing around ideas.
All right, thanks.
And with that, so we have also dissolved oxygen and fluorescence and turbidity. They're all optics, and they've all been doing pretty well. Very happy about those.
Right.
Right. Oh, David, go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to decide whether to offer this, but Rebecca, I'm sure you already talked to him, but we have regular cruise planning meetings on Fridays, and on the nutrient issue, I'm sure you already noted that Cal Morty is somebody that we regularly discuss these issues with, and probably would welcome a conversation about the nutrients and the overwinter reset.
Yeah, sure. Let's send me an email to remind me, because otherwise I will forget. But yeah, love to try and talk more about that.
Will do. Thanks.
All right, I think with that, I'm going to pass to David so we can get into our larger group discussion.
Sounds good. So thank you, Katie. Thanks so much to all of our presenters this year. This has been a great set of presentations as always. And I think we've already had some great question and answers. But before we jump in, I wanted to I asked this question in the chat, but I don't know whether you saw it. Byron, if you're still online and you want to offer some comments, I know you offered some comments in the chat. If you want to offer some comments, please first accept our apologies that we didn't invite you for a formal presentation at this meeting. And then if you wanted to offer any comments, this might be a good spot to do so. Yeah.
Hey, good morning, everybody. No, the comments I just put in the chat, I just wanted to, we were working with David and MB, and basically we have a tool that a lot of folks aren't aware of. We have a real-time weather tracking, but we've slowly been ingesting a bunch of other features in it. NOAA tides, currents, ice concentration. We're actually working with part of our Arctic Watch program. The liaison said that it's more beneficial instead of sea concentration to actually see the the stage of the ice as it determines, or is a cueing basically, or indicator of seals and whales coming in. So we're looking at changing that, but it also has AIS contact. So it's basically one-stop shopping for freezing spray warnings, weather warnings. It shows you, like I said, our real-time weather sites that AOS, we partner with AOS with. So it's just a resource there. But anyway, this template, which was mentioned at the very start of the meeting, it was designed basically to provide basic information. We take that template when we get it, and we upload it into our system, and it basically puts a display onto this blue view, onto this real-time weather app. So anyone with internet access can go and see some basic information. There's nothing proprietary or contact information for the ship. But if that is discussed or needed, then they can reach out to us. And, we're working on enrolling boats. We have 17 enrolled vessels so far in the Arctic Watch program, just to improve communication flow. We're also working to basically have a waterway safety guide, essentially for the Bering Strait, which does not exist at all in any shape or form. It was attempted years ago, but it fell out flat. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, that this is another tool that you could use to look at stuff, to look at AIS contacts, but also just to get information about it. We had great participation from the Sikuliak and the Norsemen, but other attempts to get other participants kind of fell flat just because the program just started. But I just wanted to let everyone know that's a tool out there to easily share information and get it out there. And we can be, our 24/7 watch is a resource for anyone who's out on the water to call a contact or get additional information for anything. And thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all you do. I love the presentations and hearing about all the things that you are doing. I look at the research vessel matrix and, get a description of what it is, but it's really cool to hear all the feedback and everything that's being accomplished and done and tracked and everything else. So thank you again.
Thanks. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot, and thanks for the amazing strides that you all have made in such a short time. So thanks for what you do at Arctic Watch, Byron. I continue to be amazed at the distribution and installation of these freezing spray observational tools and all kinds of other amazing things that you're doing with the site itself.
And sorry, I don't want to interrupt and jump back. One feature I forgot that was recently added, we have several cameras now that are actually, if you go to Sikuliak, you can see them in Antarctica, and it's a real-time track of the camera that's mounted on, so you can see exactly what they're doing and what the wind and weather conditions are. We also have them on the AMHS ferries and several tugs, as well as David mentioned, is the freezing spray sensors and things like that, working with NOAA and other folks to try and keep the water safe. So thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely, no worries. I think it's always important for people to hear about these new capabilities. So I totally appreciate it. So now I'll turn back to our regularly scheduled programming and sort of try to kick off this discussion. But first, maybe I should turn to the group that's still participating here. Are there overarching questions that you have, having seen all these different presentations that you want to offer for the group? And you can either raise your hands or you can offer comments in the chat. And if not, I will go ahead and pose to all the speakers and maybe all the participants here in general. Are there common threads or for the significant and unique findings across all of these different observational activities? Do they offer any insights as to the health of the ecosystem, sea ice health, bottom temperature? We've heard about these relatively warm bottom temperatures, but also in the same time about the encountering significant amounts of sea ice. And then at the same time hearing these very, very early on, these recruitment numbers that Jim reported for pollock and snow crab. So just wanted to see whether there are any reflections or any thoughts around the table about some of these observations. Thanks. And Gay, if you want to offer your person on the street perspective, I'm also very curious to hear, as always, what you're experiencing there in Nome.
Whoops. I was just typing somebody on the side. So what would you like to hear about Nome? What's going on?
Yeah, how are things going other than the Port of Nome expansion project? What are you experiencing? What are you seeing?
How's your weather?
Well, we're very warm right now. We've got freezing drizzle, so we were down very cold. I guess what I would say is the most unexpected, or what we're seeing up here. I'm not going to talk about the weather. We just had the mayor of the port of Busan, South Korea, the consulate of South Korea in Anchorage, and I think the whole delegation was 19 people that flew up to Nome for a meeting with the port commission and the city of Nome. We also had it's in the Nome Nugget, and we also had we just had a community meeting, if not yesterday, day before, with U.S. Coast Guard, SOC North contractors, Alaska National Guard, and that was for about some innovative readiness training opportunities that they're. And I would say that the Bering Strait region, we're seeing these kind of things now rolling with some regularity, and they're pretty big for us, but I think they're also pretty big for what it means for this part of the world. And so anyway, the Bering Strait is changing. So when you're thinking about your communications or your research activities, more than ever, I hope you realize it's not just an audience that often you don't see. There are bigger, it seems there are bigger plans afoot for this region, and we get that. And so yeah, keep communicating to the region. It is important both for the citizenry and for everyone else who is trying to learn about what goes on up here. We're having to talk to people. We're making decisions with people at a different level than we're typically used to having at Old St. Joe's Community Hall meeting. And you want to make sure the communities are understanding of what's going on, because if we're not, I think maybe questions come back because there'll be some confusion. And I just mean that we need to be right up there with the education level of what's going on, because I don't know if these kind of people are contacting you guys, but for the bigger picture of where we're all headed, please keep communicating, and do not think it's just some little group of people living out in Nome. We are, if you don't live here, you haven't seen what's been going on, and you're not talking to the people that are coming, or maybe you're not aware of the people that are coming, but it's very interesting. And definitely transboundary issues are a big topic. And research efforts, they may be federal, but they may not be NOAA, are of interest in the region, both from our country, but multinational as well. There's 19 people from Busan, and probably 15 of them and 4 from the consulate in Anchorage. So, that's big for us. I think they were a little surprised, but see our port versus theirs. But yeah, other than that, it's been was a warm fall, dropped rapidly, very cold temperatures. Now we're banging back up with a low that's about to hit Anchorage, so we're getting freezing drizzle. The ice seems weak. Even if we have these really, really cold temperatures. We got some little bit of southwest wind, cracked the ice right at the beach. There's a big crack line, and the ice is up right at the beach. So it's holding in place right now, but it's compromised. And we have this situation, which will bring us south winds, which will keep it up against the shore. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens between now and end of March. Thank you. Warm water.
Thank you. And thanks for letting me put you on the spot. And I see reactions from Rami, and I also see reactions from Stacy. I wonder whether either or both of you wanted to offer any comments on what you're seeing at your doorstep or at your desks.
Thank you, David. I was just echoing Gay's ask that people keep reaching out. It is, so I'm the research coordinator for QWERC, and we've seen again this year an increase in the number of research projects going both on the water and on the land. But we don't. There isn't a place to find out where they're happening other than here, and then private researchers and other entities that might be doing work that don't come to this. Like, this is sort of the most comprehensive, and as we all know, this is definitely not every project that's going up. So please do keep reaching out. As more projects get up there, the tribes are interested in research that's happening and do want to know what's happening and be consulted as appropriate and be part of those big conversations, Gay, that you reference about what is happening in this region, what are the long-term plans, and are they going to be, serving the people who live there. So thanks for this meeting.
I guess, Stacy, I'm curious to know whether you feel like, number one, you feel like people know to contact you and to reach out, and number two, whether you feel like you have the capacity to field all the queries that you're receiving, and whether there's a role that IARPC in general and possibly Field Operations Community of Practice could possibly assist with.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Yes and no, respectively. I think as marketing that, we have a research coordinator, and that's a new role for QWERC. As we've been telling people, and folks have definitely been listening. So I do get a lot of emails. And so I appreciate the offer of help that you're making. Thank you. Honestly, meetings like this and where scientists from different types of organizations are already pooling information, and then you guys digesting it and making it something easy to communicate helps so much. I don't have the capacity. I know AVCP is had a role like this. They had somebody in it, and she's transitioned to a climate mitigation role, and so my similar job down south one region is open again. Kotzebue is looking at a similar role to this, possibly at Minilik, but they don't have anybody in there right now. So as the tribal organizations sort of build up this capacity, being able to make connections, and as much as the federal guys, you guys are digesting all the information and making it easier to communicate. That's very helpful, and hopefully will continue to happen.
Excellent. Wanted to make sure I answered that question, but appreciate where you are, and appreciate your work as well. So thanks for that. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot as well. One of the things. Well,
go ahead.
Jake.
I was just going to follow up with Stacy because she makes some good points there about yes and no. I think people, I guess I would like a conversation at a all these researchers are doing the very best that they can do while they're doing their research, and then they're either ship-based or some are maybe on land, I don't know, but they're trying to communicate, and we appreciate everyone who is trying. I would take it up a notch and say, for the federal funders, for who all these nice people are doing their good works, for the federal funders, how, I'd like a conversation with how the public, the regional constituency, the American citizenry, tribal government, sovereign tribal governments, all the rest of us, what are the measurable objectives for communications with funded projects? Because it would help to have something that people, all the research, it stops putting it on the researchers to do research and then be like, oh, how do I have to do this stuff? Or what's the what am I trying to convey? Or what is it people are looking for? We have CDQ groups here that are desperately wanting to know what's going on with the ecosystem. We have harvesters. Everyone out here, if you live in rural Alaska, you are a subsistence harvester, regardless of your ethnicity. Under the federal rules, by my ethnicity, I can't participate in a marine mammal harvest. I can eat them, but I can't pull the trigger. But the point is, we're all commercial, non-commercial. We're all living in this ecosystem. We're a part of it. And so I would look at a higher level. So many questions I get about there's nothing that we're given in our packet from the researchers how to talk to communities, who are the ones. And I think that goes back. It would be helpful for the researchers to have some help from a lot of these big funders, whether it's NSF or others, have a game plan on what does the constituency want to hear about, how, and what's the game plan for the constituency of the Arctic with the science that they're doing. And I think that's kind of probably a new way of thinking, because science has evolved in the lower 48 with all, with all of your living there. But this is a whole different thing. And that's what we're seeing with the military and other foreign nationals coming up. They want to know a lot, but it's sort of shocking. There's no game plan not the military, they have a game plan, but there's no public federal game plan for comms, for where are we going with this? I understand there's probably a big game plan for research needs, but there's also people here living it. And it would be awesome for these researchers at a higher level to also have guidance and to have input from all the peoples of the coast as to, where let's join forces. Let's think about Western and Northern Alaska as constituents that deserve to be at the table. Okay, that's my soapbox. Thanks.
Let's so we were communicating on the side about meeting up next week at AMSS. Let's definitely do that. We'll find some time and let's follow up on this conversation and try to figure out how to make something useful. And whether that's FOCP or whether it's some constellation of other IARPC interests or beyond, maybe we can try to make that happen, because I think that's a very important purpose to serve.
From my eyes, I see the constituents here, including me. We're just trying to get what we can out of it, and the researchers too, they're struggling trying to figure out their science, and yet they've got to do this other thing. So is there a way we can tackle that starting by communicating? Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, I see your hand up.
Yes. Hey, Gay. Nice seeing you. I'm just curious, you mentioned military exercises. Do you know of any coming up in 2026 like last year?
Northern Edge and Arctic Edge, I believe, are coming back. And then there's some others that we're still trying to get information on from last year. So when you have, and maybe Stacy, maybe Coeric has more information on those. I don't know, but we had 4 south of Nome that involved, and that's just on our side, right? What was going on the Russian side? They're no longer, I think I'm sure they're doing exercises. They've been doing exercises every year until this year. They weren't coming into our waters, so we didn't know about it, because we do actually talk back and forth through NORAD. So the 2 countries, so when they want to do that, you're allowed to come in U.S. waters and do your war games or exercises. You're absolutely allowed to do that. You just have to give several days notice so they can get a couple of warnings out to other people. Those are the only 2 that I'm aware of, Northern Edge and Arctic Edge, but I'm sure there's more. If we had 4 last year on our side, I can only imagine there was a response to that on the Gulf of Anadir, Chukchi seaside. Thank you. Good to see you too.
So I was hoping to, we're running short on time, and I appreciate the conversation, appreciate all the great ideas around the table. So thank you. I was going to ask this question, but maybe I'll change the direction a little bit of this. One thing that is on my radar that I was hoping to ask about and maybe get some reactions from the group about today was the continuity of some of these observing activities. I know we are at a point where there's been a lot of change. Number one, there are some great emerging activities like the Northern Bering Sea initiative that Danielle Dixon, who's here on the phone, is responsible for. But I think there are also several activities that have been reporting out to this group for a number of years that also may be sunsetting or may have had their funding reduced or cut. So wanted to sort of talk about or ask this group whether it would be useful for the field operations community of practice to have a separate discussion, to host a separate discussion about the continuity of these observing activities, and to see whether there are mutual recommendations or support that we can possibly provide each other to see that some of these important records continue on. So just wanted to see or hear any reactions that might emerge around the table here. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, sure. I think that would be useful to have a discussion because I think we, there's a lot of uncertainty about the NSF budgets at the moment. And we have a lot of the Observing the Bering Strait network is one of them, but the others are also, I think we're all looking around a little bit to see where the money will be coming from. And so I'm all in favor of having a discussion to see if we can try and do things more efficiently if we need to, or something like that. So yeah, I'm all up for that.
Okay, great. That's really useful. I don't know whether anybody else has any immediate reactions. Danielle, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. No, I really like that idea, David. Thanks for offering for this group to potentially organize a conversation like that. I wonder if it might be a good idea to try our best to invite some representatives of philanthropy to join that conversation to kind of raise the awareness of where the needs are among other potential funders.
Yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable proposition, and maybe we can have a tete-a-tete next week. I know we're already supposed to meet up on Tuesday night, but let's try to figure out a time, and maybe we can try to develop that and then bring it back to our respective communities of practice to build out a proper scope and agenda for this discussion. That's great. Thank you. Okay, and unfortunately, as always, despite our best efforts to have as much time for discussion as we have, I think we did better than we usually do. I will say again, thank you to all of the presenters and all the projects and all of the different agencies that actually support them for presenting today. I know we put a lot of burden on everybody who does work in the Arctic. Obviously, there is a very good reason for that, and really appreciate all the effort that you undertake to communicate, not only do the work, but actually communicate about it with all of the folks that are interested in hearing from you. Obviously, a big thank you to IARPC and the Field Operations Community of Practice team. Always such a lovely group to work with, and I'm thrilled to continue to do so. The recording and slides will be available on the IARPC website for future reference. So I encourage any colleagues that are interested in tuning in to or weren't able to come to take a look at the recordings. We are working on updating the 2026 vessel matrix, so we will be reaching out to folks about activities that they're planning to undertake in 2026. And we'll also be talking about the pre-field meeting likely in April of 2026 as well. And Shayna mentioned this in the chat, but if you will be at the Alaska Marine Science Symposium next week, and I hope you will be, please look for me at the poster session on Tuesday evening and at Marine Planning Night on Wednesday evening, hosted by AUSE in the quarterdeck at the Captain Cook Hotel, which is the venue for the AMSS. And we will look forward to the 2025 2026 pre and post field season meetings, the mooring and vessel matrices. And really thanks again to everyone for participating.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
I thank you.